why don't we get started on today's daily collective? Grand rising, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm the Grey Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Friday, February 13th, 2026. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first two cards in our 5-card spread for today? First two cards we are starting our day off with today are the the Tower card in its upright, in combination with the Six of Swords in its upright. Let's talk a little bit about this. I want everybody to calm down. I know how everybody gets. I know how everybody gets when you guys see the Tower card. You get all stressed. The Tower card is nothing to be afraid of. It's working into the context of recognizing and identifying what needs to go away in order to be able to do something better. Okay. And I want to describe this, right? We were talking about this right before. This was a continuation on what we were effectively seeing in our last reading, because it's a continuation of recognizing and identifying what it takes in order to move towards healthy manifestation goals, right? We can't be in the context by which we articulate that we desire that we desire a manifestation, but we don't desire the context of not being ready or willing to energetically change, right? Because we understand that a healthy manifestation goal is not what we get on the other side of it, but who we find there, right? It's a journey of understanding and better recognizing the self. And when we work into that recognition point, right, when we build into the intentionality by which we energetically move towards directions, then we allow the context by which we are able to identify what it is that we're trying to heal or what it is that we're trying to energetically shed, right? And I want to describe that we're seeing a lot of this right now, right? We're seeing a lot of this in the modality of a lot of the energetic or astrological changes that we've been identifying that have been occurring at this time. We've had a lot of things happen this month. February has been rather lit from the experience of working through the astrological changes that we've had just in the span of a few weeks. Let's talk about them shortly. We had Uranus that came out of retrograde in Taurus. And what is the message of Uranus in Taurus? Uranus is often the planet that helps us in the context of change. It articulates to us that if we want to be able to, if we want to find a deeper level of comfort, we have to be willing and able to step out of our comfort zone, right? Working through things, right? And this is the important thing about it, right? A little change every day is energetically transformative, right? It doesn't require a leap, right? It doesn't require some like giant adaptability point, right? When we understand that we're gentle in our transformation, we find the ability to be stronger in ways that we've never thought possible before, right? This is how the impossible becomes possible. It doesn't do so by leaps, it does so by inches. And the gift that we give ourselves in having compassion as we continue to learn and grow and thrive, right? So we have a lot of that energy here. We also have, right? We've also experienced the fact that both Neptune and Saturn have moved back into Aries, right? And that can bring up a lot of feelings potentially as it relates to anger, right? And this is a continuation of understanding everything we have is a gift, right? So long as we are utilizing it in a sacred fashion. So what do we identify in relationality to how do we carry our anger sacredly? Through action, right? Not in identifying the fact that we have it, but being able to articulate to another how we can utilize something better, right? It's the progressive conversation that's fortified with anger, not just articulating, not just in the space of energetically crying out upon it. We also see here that for a lot of this energy that's working through this, one of the big things that we've got coming up in just a few days, we've got that eclipse energy that's going to be happening right at the time of that new moon in Pisces. And that's why I even said before we got started on today's reading, if you're in the modality, like do not go into that eclipse cycle carrying energetic resentment, because the thing that we effectively identify and recognize, and I just want to kind of say this to you, the space by which we energetically feel that we harbor something or we work through something and we feel like we're holding on to it, right? Like what happens during, like, this is what we have to be conscientious about, because often the eclipse cycles amplify things, right? The eclipse cycles never bring something new into play. It's the space by which it just amplifies what's already energetically there. So it's, again, that's often why you'll see those modalities where you go through an eclipse cycle and suddenly that little molehill you were dealing with feels like it's an energetic mountain, right? Something that doesn't feel like it's a big deal feels like it's all that you can energetically think about, right? And when we think about it in that way, then we can understand that eclipse cycles can be very, very energetically transformative, because they can allow us to effectively deep dive into something, right? Deep dive into something that is sometimes very energetically hard to see. But and that can be good, right? That can be good in a lot of different ways, as long as we're working through it in a healthy way. But if you're like, again, and this is often what happens, if you're working through that modality of obliqueness, like trying to energetically avoid something, this is often why those eclipse cycles, you can't energetically avoid it, because it works into the space of the amplification. Now, this is having a different impact depending on whether you connect to masculine, where you are on the frequency cycles. And we're going to talk a little about those energetic cycles right now, specifically and particularly in relationality to what we're effectively identifying is happening for a lot of the energy that's in solitude. Now, one of the big shifts that we saw that was potentially occurring right now for a lot of the energy that's in solitude was the shift in terms of the lessons that we see that are potentially happening in relationship right now. And one of the big shifts that we were identifying was the shift that effectively occurred right around the time that we had that most recent new moon in January, which was a Capricorn new moon during Capricorn season. And so we've been identifying the work that we see that's happening right now in relationships as working through world lessons. And what do we mean by world lessons? They're recognizing and identifying, and they're working through the lessons that we see in the world card of the tarot, which is identifying and recognizing the work that we do upon the self, building into the sense of mutual appreciation of the self that becomes the force of compassion by which we effectively approach the world around us. It's expansive. It helps us see and identify what's energetically possible. And even in the modality by which we're able to identify what's energetically possible, we work through a lot of those experiences that build into the sense or the state of being able to articulate the energetic meaning that we bring forth towards things. Now, for a lot of the energy that we see that is working through this right now, this is a continuation of what we identify that work to be, being able to energetically work through, right? And this is what I'm going to tell you right now. For these energies in solitude, this is what we effectively identify is very healthy, right? Because this is a lot of the energy that's in solitude that is recognizing and identifying that being able to see an energetic problem in a relationship is only half the battle, right? Like this is basically where, like, what we see right now with these energies in solitude, right? Being able to identify that the hurdle in a relationship is half the battle. Because if you don't have mutual desire to work on it, right? Like, seeing doesn't make something energetically better. It's a continuation of that healing journey. And it's frustrating, right? It makes you angry, as it should, right? But the ability to articulate and feel energetically fortified in our anger or our frustration is often calibrated in the space by which we're able to energetically explain it, right? It's the valuation by which we're able to put our words to it. And so this is what I see that's happening right now. And I'm not surprised to see this type of energy with Saturn moving into Aries, right? Because it's the conversation that we see that's working through the pathwork of healing for the energy and solitude that says it's the like the ability to be able to see what the energetic hurdle is in relationship is the best quality you bring to a healthy relationship, right? The ability to identify problems in healthy relationship is an absolute gift. It's a godsend. It's the greatest, like it is something that when we have healthy counterpart energy, it's an energetic relief because you're able to see how simply you can navigate a problem. Like, look at that. Look at this. This is beautiful. Look at this gift. Do you see this gift? Do you see how this can be a gift? Right? The beauty of a counterpart to be able to see an energetic hurdle and then immediately do what is energetically necessary to move, like to navigate through it, right? This is where like, and I need to point this out. Typically this Six of Swords isn't the most positive card, but the combination of it with the Tower gives the like articulates upon the space of being energetically pragmatic, right? No perseverating. It's like, here's the issue, here's the energetic solution, but it's the understanding that this will often be identified as the reason an unhealthy relationship ends, right? Like the ability to identify a problem, right? Or a disparity in manifestation goal, right? Is often the context by which another person articulates that the person identifying the problems is the energetic problem, right? It's like it's working into the context or the understanding of what that feels like to work through those experiences by which another person recognizes and realizes the rationality by which they were trying to articulate to another something that was able to be possibly fixed, but another person trying to articulate that their ability of identifying problems was a hurdle in relationship, and it will be. Like, that's just the sad truth of it, right? Like your ability to identify problems in an unhealthy relationship will destroy an unhealthy relationship because an unhealthy relationship requires one to disassociate in order to be able to stay within it, right? So this is a lot of the energy that's working through that understanding, and even in by which they're working to understand it, they're starting to feel things again. Right? They're starting to feel there's a lot of energetic feelings that are potentially coming up, especially if someone is healing in that capacity. We also see that this is the quality and condition by which new relationships are forming, right? The ability to articulate and identify the experience of the past. And what we like about this is these are not energies that are coming into relationship avoiding the conversation of the past, right? There's none of this here, right? There's none of this obliqueness in these new relationships because again, if this was the quality and condition by which these energies moved away from a relationship, that ability of effectively tackling things, right? They're almost like they're continuing, right? They're continuing the work of healing in past relationship through the conversation of new relationship because they're identifying and they're articulating upon it and they're asking each other if there was something that they felt they could have done better, right? It's the activating conversation that allows for new horizons to be found. Now we're moving into continuing forward we're moving into those moon relationships. Now, the moon relationships were effectively coming together between the time, and the reason we articulate them as moon relationships is they were effectively working through the lessons that we see that were reflected in the moon card of the tarot, and they were coming together between the time of January 18th, so that new moon in Capricorn we experienced, up until the time that Uranus went retrograde, which was over in the fall, so it's around September 6th. Center card for today's spread. Ooh, we like it. A 5 of wands in its reversal is a good 5 of wands, right? Because, and I want to point this out, like when we look at the three cards here, this is giving a lot of indications of what we see is happening for those energies that are moving deeper into connection. Full tilt energy. It's full tilt. And the reason I keep on getting this right now, this eclipse season, this eclipse season for those moon relationships, I want to describe this and I need to explain what's happened here because these moon relationships were effectively coming together. They were coming together during the retrograde season. It was very slow moving. It was a lot of like whatever could go wrong was going wrong as it related to getting together simultaneously and similarly, having triggering experiences that felt very similar to past trauma. But we see what's effectively happening here is that energy feeling like, again, hard part first kind of situation, having to go through all of that energetic rigor, working through all of those energetic hurdles, and then even in the experience by which they felt that, having those modalities or those experiences by which they saw how easy, right? How easy it was to go through hard things together. Now that we have a lot of this energy coming through with the eclipse cycle, it's almost saying to me like it's like I don't want to say it's smooth sailing because it's not the smooth sailing is not the best way to describe it, but it's the energetic relief that they're feeling in being in a relationship. I just keep on hearing the same message for these moon relationships. Being in a relationship for the first time where their purpose is not being taken personally by the person that they're in partnership with is what I keep on getting. Because I keep on seeing that a lot of these moon relationships carry trauma for experiences by which another person tried to articulate that their sense of purpose was in some way unhealthy to relationship. But this is the heavy message that I see that's coming through those relationships right now, which is when we have unified goals, then seeing purpose in another is passionate energy. It energetically inspires us. It leads us to want to go deeper or further. So we've got a lot of that energy that feels like I keep on hearing like it's like navigating through that point and feeling that experience. But even in that way, like being able to almost feel this effluviance in relationality to the way that they feel for each other because, right, they're finally in a relationship by which they don't feel like they continually feel that they have to check on the health of the energetic partnership, even as they're working towards their purpose. Now, fourth and fifth cards in our 5-card spread for today are, we've got here the Two of Cups in its reversal with the Nine of Wands in its upright. We're going to talk about these temperance relationships right now. Let's talk about how are my temperance relationship babies doing right now? Let's talk about Oh man, it's always the energy deep within divine union. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this here. What are we seeing? And so again, for our purposes, we're working through the temperance relationships. The temperance relationships were the relationships we were working through that they were coming together while we're learning while we are going through the temperance lessons. So focusing on the temperance lessons in the temperance card lessons of the tarot. And they were coming together between the time that Uranus went retrograde in September up until the summer solstice period, which was around June 21st of last year. And so the thing I keep on seeing in relationality to this work right now is there not being enough of the self to go around. All I keep on seeing there, right? Having to work through the space of feeling like there isn't enough of the self to go around. And I keep on getting that for a lot of the energy, working through that experience or working through that energetic frustration, right? Having to effectively streamline things, right? Like this is the energy of the counterpart, right? These are the counterpart connections, identifying and being supportive to each other as it relates to being able to articulate what healthy boundaries are, right? And I like this because these relationships, right? We saw that the major lesson that was coming through in those partnerships was the mutual effort that pays off in big ways, right? The identification point in being able to articulate and define, right, what is possible. And we see here that that's a continuation of understanding, right? This is the energy that it keeps on reaffirming to each other that articulating boundaries are healthy, right? Because when we articulate our energetic boundaries to others, how they hold those boundaries tell us everything we need to know about the strength of the relationship, right? Like, this is what we articulate. And again, and I keep on hearing this energy say to each other, healthy energy loves healthy energy loves strong boundaries. And the reason we see that healthy energy loves strong boundaries is because it articulates the ability, right? They're effectively going through experiences by which others energetically harbored things, right? And what does it feel like when another person harbors something? It's working into the context of lacking energetic integrity. Right? Because what does it mean to have integrity? Integrity means our yeses stay yeses and our nos stay nos, right? And when we have energetic integrity and our yeses stay yeses and our nos stay nos, then it allows us to be able to build into the context of what feels energetically fortifying and strong, right? It allows us to build healthy architecture. So we see that for a lot of the energy effectively doing that work or identifying that, this is a lot of the energy that effectively looks out for each other because what do we see? They have a tendency, right? They're working through the space by which they have a tendency of not articulating their boundaries in healthy ways. So this is a continuation of working through a lot of that experience, right? A lot, and I want to describe this too. We were talking about this last time we were doing these readings. There's a lot of that energy deep within divine union right now that is recognizing a trauma wall within the self. And what is a trauma wall within the self? A trauma wall within the self is a wall that one had to erect within the self at a time by which it was energetically keeping it safe, right? Keeping the self safe. Like who we have to energetically become in trauma environments often feel like the protected sense of the self. So the energy working through those modalities or experiences by which they're recognizing, right? That what effectively we create at a time of trauma that protects us often feels like it creates hurdles in healthy spaces. They're working to effectively resolve and dissolve those within, but it takes time. I keep on hearing it's the work of a lifetime. And so that's a lot of the energy that effectively articulates and says to each other to be gentle as they do that work. Continuing to get clarification, moving back towards that tower and the Six of Swords in its upright. Can I get one card, please, moving back towards the energy and solitude right now? We've got here the Seven of Cups in its upright. And you see what I'm talking about here? See what I'm talking about? Healthy tower. That right there, that's a healthy tower, right? Because I need to point out, right? What do we see here? Do we see a tower? Like do we we see like these two, and I need to describe. This is what I mean about there's no card in the tarot that's a bad card because look at this. These are two cards you want to like. This is reasonable, right? This is reasonable. This is energetically reasonable. And so we like to see this because, right? Look how beautiful it becomes when we're energetically reasonable. Look at that. Look how easy things are when we become energetically reasonable. I love these three cards together. So we're going to take a moment to pause and look at them, right? Because this articulates that when things are difficult, right? Like when things are difficult, but we don't avoid the difficulty, right? We just recognize and identify and we're energetically patient, right? It opens us up to new possibility, right? The observation and the identification in being able like this is what patience gets you. This is and remembering, right? And this is a continuation of understanding. Patience does not mean waiting, right? Patience does not mean waiting for things because when we wait for things, right? What happens when we wait for things? When we wait for things, we start harboring, right? Because when we wait, we're harboring. Okay. So we make sure when we're moving towards healthy manifestation goals, no harboring, which means we don't stay in a latent state and say, where is it? We get to it, right? We look, we move, we stay in that, but the perpetual motion of a healthy manifestation is one by which one is always identifying and recognizing multiple ways by which one can bring it into fruition, right? And so this is beautiful because what we're effectively seeing for a lot of those energies that are in solitude are working into right? They're working into healing via the productivity, right? They're working through healing via the productivity. And that's the space by which, right, one identifies and articulates that the fallacy that we come into in relationality to a healthy manifestation is observing, is coming out of the fallacy by which you recognize that just because you cannot see it doesn't mean that it's energetically happening, right? Because when we think about the space of healthy manifestation as perpetual preparation, and even in the context of healthy relationship, when we understand that there's no manifestation goal on the planet by which we can find joy, right? We have to bring joy with us to all of our manifestation goals. It's a BYOJ situation. Okay. When we understand that we need to bring our own joy to our manifestations, right? We first start to heal as it relates to relationships, because it's the understanding that if you're not happy now, there's no relationship on the planet by which you'll find joy. It's just going to amplify the joy you have, right? It'll make the joy you have greater, right? But it's not gonna create something there that doesn't exist. So that observation of the energy saying, "I'm working on finding relationship by finding my joy, because that is the joy that I'm going to be bringing into healthy partnership," right? That's a lot of the energy that is working through the space of understanding that the space by which we're in solitude is not the space by which we're in energetic separation from relationship, but the space by which we're expanding, right? We're expanding the joy that we're going to bring into healthy partnership, right? So this is a lot of the energy that is working into the context of loving the solitary self, because when the solitary self becomes celebration, then we find healthy partnership. And simultaneously, we see that a lot of those relationships that are working through that right now, the ones that are coming deeper into energetic connection, that's why there's like, what do you see? There's hesitancy there, isn't it? A little bit of hesitancy there, right? This is the energy that's looking at relationship in a different way, right? This is the energy that's saying, like, oh, finding the joy, you get a little bit more precious in relationality to where you find relationship, because, right, you're recognizing and identifying that that joy effectively becomes the preciousness, right? And they're holding themselves more energetically preciously. Now, this brings us towards those relationships that are moving deeper into partnership right now, those moon relationships, clarification between our Tower card in its upright in combination with the Five of Wands in its reversal. Can I get one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with the Ace of Cups in its upright. I want you, if you are a tarot nerd, I want you to look I want you to look at the difference between this first row and the second row today. We've got a lot of cup energy that's coming into or coming through the second row. And this is a continuation of the reading that we had the other day that was really beautiful. Because again, I'm going to describe this to a certain extent as like, and I want to describe this is articulating upon and I wanted to say this, like, and this is what you have to understand. That's why, like, Tower card can be breakdown or breakthrough, right? And the modality by which we recognize the difference between a breakdown and breakthrough is how energetically stable we feel as we're navigating through it, right? Like the like and like what is one of the first things that you're going to recognize when you're moving towards a manifestation goal, right? Right? Like when you move towards a healthy manifestation goal, right? The first thing you're going to see is the energetic hurdle, right? You're going to see the limiting belief in the self, right? You're going to see you're going to start to observe the changes within the self, right? And holding those experiences gently, right? Allow us to be able to identify and effectively adapt towards things, right? It's the space by which we ourselves are able to grow and change. And I like this about these moon relationships, because remember when I said these relationships, and I want to describe the level of trauma I see in some of these moon partnerships. These moon partnerships the energy in these moon partnerships have often looked at relationship as detriment because they've had a sense of purpose, right? and the modality by which they've experienced, they've worked through the paradox, right? They've worked through the paradox, the purpose paradox, which is the identification of another that effectively longs to be in proximity towards an energy and purpose, but then articulates the fact that the purpose is acting as impediment to partnership, right? And the thing is, when we have shared purpose, purpose is never impediment. It's shared passion. So this is why we see that there's a lot of passion that is potentially expanding and flourishing in these relationships because it's the modality by which they're seeing. Like, look at this. This is the energy. Like, look at these moon relationships, right? This is the energy. This is how it's felt in the past for those moon relationships, right? The modality by which somebody says, right? Oh, I know that this is what I said that I liked in you, but now I hate it because it's standing in the way of what I want with you, right? Like that is the unshared sense of purpose versus the relationships that are flourishing now. Like look at that beautiful, like look at that. Do you see that? Do you see this? Do you see these 2 cards in combination, right? Do you see that combination right there? Which is the space by which when we share, like when we observe and recognize and work through that, it leads us to finding an energetic state of bliss. So this is a lot of those moon relationships that are basically articulating to each other. They're saying thank you because through you, I found bliss, right? Because, right, you don't see the activation in terms of doing a lot of things as something that you feel that you're on the outside of, but something in the modality by which they're effectively recognizing and saying that because they view because they hold each other's purpose with the same passion as they themselves do, it leads, right? It leads to new possibilities of shared passion, right? It leads to that an even deeper sense of energetic commitment, even though, right? And I keep on hearing this, like, even though they may not necessarily be in the space by which they're perpetually concentrating upon the relationship. I keep on hearing the relationship that acts as firmament to building into a stronger sense of purpose. Now, this brings us to the temperance relationships. Clarification between that 5 of Wands in its reversal with that 2 of Cups in its reversal. Can I get one card, please? We've got the Queen of Swords in its upright. I don't mind seeing the Queen of Swords there. Queen of Swords has been coming up a bit now. I'm not Queen of Swords is very similar to the Hermit card with me when I read. She doesn't like to make too many appearances, which is good. That's the thing about it. We don't need a Queen of Swords that's popping up too much because it's I like to describe this, the thing I see that's happening with a lot of these temperance relationships, it's a lot of this hands on the hip energy, which is, and I need to stress this because remember when I said that there's something about these temperance relationships by which they're incredibly compassionate? They are often the space by which they just take on, like I keep on hearing these temperance relationships are often very adept at carrying others' burdens. I need to say they're very, very strong energy, which means they're very, very adept at carrying at carrying others' burdens, right? But this is why, even in the context of healthy relationship, I keep on hearing, and this is what I keep on getting, energy that carries others' burdens has limits. Is what I keep on that's like look at this energy that's very adept, energy that's very adept at carrying others' burdens. They have limits, and those limits, man, they are blessed limits. Man, they are blessed limits, right? Because it's the energy that often and that often articulates upon experiences like that. Because the reason it's a blessed limit is because when you're already in the space by which you're ready to take an additional burden, right? This is the energy that recognizes that they're in that quality or capacity. Right? Because this is the energy that recognizes and identifies that this is what we mean by the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? It's the modality by which we effectively articulate to another, right? That blessed moment that we say, I care, but don't allow the context of the care to energetically push the limits in relationality to how we energetically feel about things, is what I keep on seeing, right? And so I feel like that is effectively what the energy is articulating to each other, right? As it relates to feelings of energetic frustration, right? It's the modality by which they're effectively able to articulate and expound to one another as it relates to the situations and circumstances that often feel like they are being energetically and I keep on getting this too, and it's interesting because the energy articulates upon, and I keep on getting there's conversations upon stress versus expansion, right? And why are those temperance relationships having conversations related to stress versus expansion? Because when we're working into or through the capacity or the understanding of being able to identify and articulate upon something that effectively bothers the self. And I keep on seeing this. The energy feels the supportive architecture of a relationship that helps them identify whether the work is needed outside or inward, right? Somebody saying that's ridiculous, or someone saying that's something that you yourself need to get energetically stronger with, right? So I like that because that is the energy that articulates to each other that feeling of stability, because it is the stability by which they feel energetically fortified as it relates to how they feel about things. Moving back towards the energy in solitude, clarification between the Two of Cups in its reversal in combination with the Nine of Wands in its upright. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with the Magician in its reversal. And let's talk a little bit about that Magician in its reversal, because the Magician in its reversal is not necessarily a negative, okay? And especially in the context of the cards that we're seeing there. And why is the Magician in the context of that cards not necessarily a negative? Because the thing with the Magician in its reversal has to do with being able to understand and identify, right? The space by which we underappreciate ourselves, right? The space by which we underappreciate our own power, the space by which we underappreciate our own sense of self. And I want you to recognize this. I want you to remember this. Trauma will always try to make you feel that you are less than who you are. I'm going to say that again. Trauma will always try to make you feel that like you are less than who you are, right? And that's often in the modality by which, and I keep on getting this, like some of this energy in solitude are potentially healing from experiences by which, right? And this is why we talk about the fact that trauma is a forgetful place, right? We often forget ourselves when we're navigating trauma spaces, because every message that we get as we're experiencing a trauma environment says to us, right? Wouldn't you be better being someone else? Like, wouldn't it be better if you were someone else? Wouldn't it be better if you were someone else, right? It's the modality by which we feel, right? It's the modality by which we feel like we energetically don't fit in, right? It's the energy that says, wouldn't you prefer? Like, wouldn't you prefer to be just like the rest? It's working into that capacity, and it's painful, right? Because it almost makes us feel, right? It makes us feel out of place in our own experience, right? It makes us feel less than. And so what I basically see is happening right now for a lot of that energy in solitude is it feels like they're energetically remembering themselves, right? They're coming back to themselves, and it's painful. This is why we talk about, and I've got two different experiences right now that are happening for a lot of that energy that is working through those circumstances or experiences, right? This is the energy that's remembering their enoughness, right? Right, that's that magician in its reversal. Magician in its reversal is understanding and recognizing our sacred enoughness, which is understanding that when we're in like, never are we more energetically blessed than when we're working into a space of remembering that we are energetically enough, because when we're in healthy spaces, right, we recognize that we are blessings, right? And that modality or that experience by which we're able to identify and recognize, by which we're able to energetically work through things, allow us the ability to start to heal. And I keep on getting, and I think that this is somewhat painful for some of that energy that was that's in solitude right now, right? They're almost in the modality by which they're forgiving themselves for being in relationship by in the space by which they forgot who they were, right? Because when we recognize that the quality and condition of trauma is one that often feels of another, like forcing us to forget ourselves, then we're able to effectively identify and recognize that that is the capacity by which we're working to heal, right? And I keep on getting that a lot of that work that's happening there is starting in the state by which the self is working on nourishing and healing, right? And so for a lot of that, and also these new relationships that are forming right now, it's really beautiful because remember, these relationships that are coming together right now, they are coming together with Uranus in Taurus. Uranus in Taurus says the only way to get into a deeper comfort zone is to step out of one, right? And again, it doesn't mean, and this is what we talk about with healthy change, right? Healthy change does not mean going on the deep end with change. It's not like throwing yourself into the energetic abyss of change. A little change every day does us good because it's the space by which we get comfortable navigating discomfort, but in such a way that we recognize is nourishing and healthy for us, right? And continuing forth in terms of finding confidence. How do we find confidence in things? We find confidence, right? You don't wake up one day confident. You don't wake up one day confident. How do you find confidence? A little discomfort every day. A little discomfort, a little more discomfort, a little more discomfort every day. And the next thing you know, ta-da, you're confident, right? It doesn't create confidence is basically what you do in the space of navigating discomfort, right? And we get stronger in that space. And as we get stronger, we become more comfortable being energetically vulnerable, right? It's funny like that. But that's what I keep on getting in terms of these relationships, right? It's a lot of the energy that is potentially like they're not waiting with each other to talk about what was the issue with the past relationship, right? It's not the last conversation, it's the first one. It's a continuation of the conversation. They're looking at relationship. They're looking at new relationship as a continuation of the conversation in relationality to what it is that they were energetically trying to work upon in the past, because that is the energy that articulates upon, right? That state, because that is now the healthy boundary, right? It's not the modality. Why would you wait to talk about it? It's the first thing that they're effectively speaking upon, right? And even in that space, they're navigating through their own energetic discomfort, but even in the space by which they're working through the discomfort, they're finding, what are they finding? They're finding strength and fortification, continuing to get clarification, moving into those moon relationships again. Clarification, I love these two cards together. Between the 7 of Cups in its upright with that Ace of Cups in its upright, one card, please. Ooh, 4 of Wands in its upright. And we love a 4 of Wands in its upright because, and these cards here, and I just want to show you, right? This is why we're energetically patient, right? And this is why we don't assume things, okay? Things can be happening that we're not energetically aware of, right? And the modality by which we navigate circumstances with a sense of patience allows us to open up new possibilities, right? And this is why volatility, and I need to stress this. It's not to say It's not to say that there aren't, because we're gonna get into this as soon as we get into the temperance relationships, because what I basically see is the moon relationships are working through the observation of experiences that felt very triggering as they were coming into union. Remember how I said that those were a lot of relationships were going through coincidental situations that felt very similar to intentional harm wrought in traumatizing relationships of the past? This is the energy that's understanding and recognizing the beauty of giving each other the benefit of the doubt, right? Because that's often what we need to do as we're working to energetically heal, right? The state or the nature by which we're able to effectively articulate and work through something. The adaptability by which we are able to effectively identify and recognize and work upon something in a greater way, right? Building into that context and building into that modality of working through positivity. This is what I like about these relationships, and I need to stress this. It's not that they're perfect, right? It's not that they're perfect. Nothing's perfect. There's no relationship on the planet that's perfect. When you see perfection, what you're seeing are energies that are working very fundamentally on shared purpose, right? And when we recognize that ability of moving through something smoothly has less to do with the fact that everything is perfect, but more the fact that they immediately work to ease that tension, right? This is like, I keep on hearing these moon relationships, like drama free, like drama, like drama. And it's not the fact that there aren't moments by which they don't feel energetically tested by one another, right? The testiness, but the modality by which they work to resolve it as quickly as it energetically comes up, right? Is the force of the amplification of the love that they feel for one another, right? It's like the rigor that's resolved just as quickly, right? And that's what I keep on seeing. That is why they see one another as each other's blessing, because it's a modality by which they say it's not the fact that they feel like everything is going to be perfect together, but the fact that they recognize the same desire to move through things with a mutual sense of perfecting, not looking for perfection, but perpetually perfecting. Now, this brings us to those temperance relationships, clarification between that Ace of Cups energy and the Queen of Swords. I like to see an Ace of Cups next to a Queen of Swords. But this is why that energy, the temperance relationships, are in a way different place right now. One card, please. Yeah, the star energy. And I like this too, because this is working through frustration in the best way possible, right? This is the gift or benefit that we find. And this is how, like, I want to point this out. This is how we fortify our anger, right? It's not, this is why we shouldn't walk around angry all the time, but we should talk about the things that bother us, because just as we talk about a healthy manifestation goal, we derive the health of our manifestation goal by being able to articulate it to those around the self. If you're ever questioning the health of a manifestation goal, start saying it out loud. Okay? So too do we refine our anger, right? Because when we talk about things that bother us, we energetically complain, right? And I keep on hearing the modality by which we complain is fortified by being able to articulate and identify what it is that we can do better, right? It's not, I keep on hearing two-handed approach to things, which says it's not just the fact that we articulate that something won't do, but we identify and articulate what would be preferable, right? The problem that has a solution. And this is what we see, right? And this is what we see with a lot of the energy right now, particularly, like, look at this. Whoop, we got the next card out. It's on the ground. It's transverse, but we'll get there in a minute. Like, look at these three cards together, right? Look at these three cards with that five of wands, and it's upright. And this is a continuation that identifies and demands, right? And I like that Queen of Swords, because this is a Queen of Swords that says, you seem upset, and being like, I have a right to be upset, right? It's the energy that goes. When we have healthy standards, we don't mind talking about them. This is literally I love and we're gonna talk about this a lot when we do that tarot class next week on studying the sword suite of the tarot, right? Because this is the identification of what it feels like to hold a healthy standard, right? You're like, "Here, you wanna look at it? Yeah, it's sharp. I know, because it's important." Right? It's important. Yeah, don't touch it. Don't touch it, right? Because that's what we talk about with the standard. It's not the fact that we keep it behind our back. A healthy standard is not one that we say, I've got the standard. No, you can't look at it. No, I don't want to talk about it. No, I'm not inclined to. That's not a standard. That's trauma in disguise. If you ever have a standard that you're not inclined to talk about and you're not inclined to explain, I hate to break it to you, that's some trauma that you've been carrying around that has disguised itself as a standard. Because when we have a standard, we want to talk about it out loud. We're gonna go very clear. We're gonna be very clear. Be very happy to be very happy to discuss it. We'll talk about it all day. We'll talk about it all day. How much time you got? How much time? How much time you got? How much time you got? Right? It's like sit down. We got nope. We're not going anywhere. We're gonna talk it through. Right? It's the authenticity of a healthy energetic standard that becomes a benefit and relief to everybody around us, right? This is the blessing of having a healthy standard. Oh my God, look how easy it is. Oh my gosh, no, they don't know. Don't take, look at that. Don't take anything personally. Why would you take something personally? Right? It's like, this is what's beautiful. And it's not, and here's the thing about it. We don't take things personally. We take them profoundly, right? And the ability to understand, right? The ability to understand we can take things profoundly when we stop taking things personally is when we articulate and say it's not about the self, right? It's about something energetically important, right? And you'll notice this, right? You'll often notice this with those that are too, and I keep on getting like this is often what happens in relationality to the difference between someone who's moving through what we like to describe as um, like too much in the space of the ego. And this is what we have to be conscientious about. When we're too much in our ego, we cannot see ourselves, right? And you'll often notice that those who are deep in their ego often feel somewhat disinclined to talk about the self, right? While we also see the modality by which those that are not in their ego say it's not about me. And so this is what we're going to experience a bit. Like we're going to continue to have this issue that we're going through, particularly as Uranus moves into Gemini, because we started to see it a bit there too previously, which is often the what feels unhealed and what feels healed can look very similar in very different ways, right? And the way that you can usually, right? The way that you can usually identify and recognize what feels supportive to the self is via healthy standard, right? The ability to effectively identify and talk about something, but not just in the modality by which we talk about it, but the space by which we're able to effectively define and articulate why we feel so strongly about something is often the space by which we recognize and identify that we're not holding it personally, we're holding it profoundly. And those who are often too deep in their ego will often what is it but by which they'll identify when you try to talk to them about a standard, what will you find instead of a standard? You'll find fear, right? You'll be like, "Can you please explain that standard?" And someone will be like, "I'm not inclined to talk about the standard." And be like, "But I need you to give some clarification on why you have that standard. I don't need to tell you my standard, but I really need you to, but I don't." And then you finally get to the bottom and go, "'Cause I'm afraid." There's that trauma we were talking about, right? And this is why we have to energetically talk about or work through things because it is how we build into the healthy architecture of self. And this is what I keep on seeing with some of these moon relationships because they recognize the ability to talk to each other about things by which they couldn't even have a conversation in a past relationship, like the modality by which they would try to have a hard conversation and another person would just walk out, right? I don't want to be here for it, right? You watch it. You can watch the ego, right? The ego that rushes away, right? The ego that says, I don't have time for this, right? What does the ego say? I don't have time for this conversation, right? Just as you're about to get to the bottom of something, Like, that's what the ego look, I found it. There it is, right? That's what the ego says in the modality by which you start to come towards another person's vulnerability, right? Let's get to the bottom of this. I don't have time for this. Aha, look, ego, right? There it is, right? The defense mechanism of the self saying, I feel fear. I can't have this conversation. I got to get away from this, right? So we see that there's a lot of that energy there that's working into, right? It's working into navigating that sense of energetic stillness, right? The modality or the experience by which we feel energetically stabilized. It's the work that we do that allows us to feel fortified. And I keep on getting that for a lot of the energy doing that work, these moon relationships, this is why they care about each other so deeply. Because I see that to that, like I see this energy saying there's nothing that they can't speak upon, right? It's not now, and that doesn't mean that there aren't things that are hard conversations or vulnerable conversations, but they work really hard to say, right? Like the conversation is always one that they're avid to energetically explore because they understand that as they navigate through that discomfort, they find more of themselves within it, right? Continuing towards those temperance relationships between the Queen of Swords in its upright and the Magician card in its reversal. One card to clarify. The Knight of Cups in its reversal. So let's talk a little bit about the Knight of Cups in its reversal here. So the Knight of Cups that we're seeing in its reversal, and I got to tell you, like this temperance energy right now, like, and I want to describe this. A lot of that temperance energy, I just keep on seeing it's working into the context of identifying and recognizing. I keep and it's like it's weird because um I keep on hearing the word or selfish. Selfless or selfish, because it's often the space by which when another person is working selflessly, another person will identify them as being selfish. And why do we see that that occurs? Because it's and I want to describe this because when we are in the space by which we demand too much of each other's energy, right? When we're in the space of demanding too much of each other's energy, then when you can see that when someone's working selflessly, right? So they're doing a lot of work. They don't have a lot of time, right? They're giving their everything to anything. Another person will see someone being selfless and they will articulate that they're being selfish. But that's because another person wants more of that person, right? And so it's often the space I keep on hearing selfless is selfish, which is the modality by which this energy has often experienced wounds by which they've had to energetically separate or heal from, modalities by which they're trying to do everything for everyone. And someone builds into the space of holding anger towards them because they would not give them enough of themselves. Right. And so that's why I keep on seeing that is a lot of the energy that works upon the context of healing by articulating their boundaries because it's a continuation of the energy that, and again, I keep on hearing the counterparts helping each other in this capacity. And that's what they're saying to each other, which is selfless is selfish, which is a modality of saying, don't be surprised when you're in that experience by which you're doing everything you can in every way possible for another person to see you in that way and articulate that you're being selfish, not because you actually are, but because they don't feel like they're getting enough of you. And so that's why I keep on seeing that is why I just keep on hearing those two words echoing right now deep within divine union, because it's the observation of often working into the space of nature when like the energy saying recognize the compassionate nature of that state that allows one to effectively calibrate upon it. Continuing to get clarification between our Four of Wands in its upright in combination with that Star card in its upright. And I'm going back down here because there was a card that fell on the floor that I feel is the next card and it's transverse, moving us back to the energy in solitude. Three of Wands in its transverse. And I like this because the Three of Wands, the Three of Wands in its transverse, the Three of Wands in its transverse in this, like, in this experience that we're seeing here for the energy and solitude is working into what it feels like to be in a relationship of integrity. I keep on getting a relationship of integrity is a relationship where our yeses stay yeses and our no's stay no's, right? This is what we articulate. A relationship of integrity is where our yeses stay yeses and our no's stay no's. And the ability for us to effectively articulate that, it doesn't mean, right? It doesn't mean that there aren't circumstances by which things change. But this is what we talk about building into a healthy relationship, because you'll often notice this with an unhealthy relationship by which another person says something could not be clearer, could not be more open and honest about how they feel. And another person says, okay, but what they're really saying is, I'll wait, right? Like the modality by which another person gives a false yes, in the space by which another person says something, and in the modality by which they say it, they're being completely energetically honest about the reality of a circumstance. And then another person says, okay, yes. They give the articulation of yep, yes, but what they're really saying is I'll wait, which is the space by which they themselves are harboring. In that moment, that is when harboring happens, because it's the moment by which another person sees someone in their authenticity and doesn't see their authenticity as a gift, but rather as something they are working to fix, right? And this is why we have to stop looking at each other like situations that require fixing. Because when we take each other at our integrity, then our yeses are yeses and our nos are nos. It's not the modality by which we say, well, it's yes now, but we'll see how it goes, right? Because in that experience by which we're building into the context of someone being completely authentic with us, being completely clear in relationality to what their manifestation goals are, the modality by which another person articulates upon their manifestation, and then we look at it and go, oh, I can fix that, then that is the space by which the unhealed energy is coming towards it, right? Because it's the modality or the experience by which we don't try to change each other's manifestation goals. We recognize and identify what they are. And that doesn't mean, right? That doesn't mean that there aren't things that change over time, but we don't build into a relationship with the expectation of another person being authentic with us and us feeling the sense that we ourselves are being patient. So this is a lot of the energy that's working to heal in that way, either from experiences where that has happened to them, right? Modalities or experiences by which they felt like they said to another person they could not have been clearer, like they could not have been absolutely clearer to another person. And even in the space of clarity, another person took their clarity, like through one ear and out the other, right? Someone who could not have been clearer, another person said, sure. But what they really said is, I'll be patient, right? Like waiting for something to change, versus the modality or experience by which this is the energy that says, this is why we articulate upon our manifestations. It's not the last conversation we have, it's the first. Because if someone, it does not want the same manifestation goal as you, right? There's nothing more less healthy than being in a relationship with the expectation or the hope that you can somehow energetically convince another person that they might find that manifestation goal appealing if you give them a sample of yourself. It's like literally the energy in solitude going, no free sample energy when it comes to the self, which is not saying, I know you say you don't want that, but maybe if I just give you a taste of myself, like maybe that'll, like, I don't, you haven't tried me yet. Like, it's a lot of that type of energy, right? It's the energy that's healing in that capacity. But that's often what happens, right? That's often what happens when we're entering unhealthy relationship, right? The modality of another person being like, oh, well, no, no, no. I know they're saying that now, but they just haven't gotten a load of, they haven't gotten a load of this yet. They haven't gotten a load of this. Like none of that is what I keep on seeing, right? So there's a lot of that energy that's working through that state of energetic healing. Now, continuing to get clarification, and even in the space, and I want to describe this, these relationships that are coming together right now, potentially articulating upon experiences of that nature, either things that have happened to them, right? Or the way, or, and this is that I told you, remember, I told you these new relationships are navigating their cringe. The observation of them informing another that that's what they themselves were doing, right? Do you see how strong these new relationships are? Some of these relationships that are literally articulating to another person their own tendencies and potentially doing that before. Do you know how much strength it takes to be able to observe that? I told you, a lot of breakthroughs potentially happening in this energy right now. Continuing forward between the star card in its upright with the Knight of Cups in its reversal, moving back towards those moon relationships. We've got here the King of Pentacles in its reversal. Let's talk about it. Wow, there's a lot. This is incredible. Like when you see these cards here again, if you're a tarot nerd, there's a little bit of an energetic knot that we see that's happening in this spread today that's very intriguing. And this is what I keep on getting, and this is why those moon relationships feel so happy right now is what I keep on seeing. But the reason I keep on hearing the energy is happy and terrified. The energy is happy and the energy is happy and terrifying. Look at this. Look at this. Because this is and I just wanna describe it, but why but here's why, look at this. Look at this. This is like I've never felt like this type of energy, right? We've got the Star card with the King of Cups because, again, I told you, these are relationships by which I feel like these are relationships that often felt the anxiety in having to deal like, they're working through the space of having to heal from relationships where there were integrity wounds, which is the modality by which another person was articulating that they didn't mind something until they found out a little too long down the line that they minded it very much, right? Like that is an integrity wound. That is literally an integrity wound. We don't talk about integrity enough. And what is integrity? Integrity is the space by which our yeses stay yeses and our nos stay nos. But the hard part about it, and this is what I keep on getting, this is why those moon relationships took so long to energetically come together. Having had too many experiences where someone was like, yeah, 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 nope, right? Right. When we don't know ourselves enough, we often, and this is what happens, when we don't know ourselves enough, we often lack energetic integrity because we don't know how things are going to be. And I need to point this out, and we recognize this, right? We often recognize this with healthy manifestation goals. There's like a lot of the journey of manifestation goals. We always realize this. Some manifestation goals you start to proceed down. And you're like, you know what? This isn't what I thought it would feel like. I don't like this. And that's okay because our ability to articulate and recognize and identify that, that's fine. That's stabilizing, right? We are allowed the context of being energetically able to change. But what we have to be conscientious about, right, is the modality by which we change too much, right? The space by which we're too changing. And so I keep on getting that for a lot of the energy doing that work, kind of working into, and this is why these moon relationships feel a lot of that overwhelm right now, right? The state by which they're seeing each other's authenticity, right? It's not just the fact that they articulated something, but they're moving towards it and they're finding the strength of the person on the other side that has the energetic strength, not just to articulate upon the relationship that they aspire for, but having the strength and determination in order to feel that sense of energetic certitude as they move towards it. I just keep on getting that for a lot of those relationships, working through, right, like working through a lot of that steadfastness is beautiful because specifically because they felt like they've never had that before. And it's that space, right? Like working into the state or nature where they're feeling that stability in partnership is allowing them to expand upon purpose in ways that they've never dreamt possible. Final card for today's spread, moving towards those temperance relationships, clarification between the Three of Wands in its transverse and the King of Pentacles in its reversal. We've got here the Temperance card in its reversal. And so this, I'm not surprised to see the Temperance card in its reversal here because it's talking towards the energetic rush that we're potentially feeling right now, right? Often it is very common as we're navigating closer to eclipse cycles to feel a lot of that Like, I like to describe it as, like, a lot of that that vibration of anticipation that we often feel, right? Especially when we're going into a Pisces new like, especially when we're starting the eclipse season with a Pisces new moon, it can feel like a lot, like having to navigate a lot with a fresh perspective, right? It's like having to, like, navigate a lot with a fresh perspective, like a new set of eyes, right? It's that type of energy. So a lot of the work that we effectively do and recognize is when we're working through healthy manifestation, healthy manifestation is it helps us to see more, right? It's the identification of recognizing and identifying, right? And this is often what we understand, right? And this is why we understand the journey of becoming ourselves, or the journey of exploring or understanding ourselves deeper, right? Often is found through the pathwork of healthy manifestation, right? Because when you think about it as that beautiful moment by which you energetically desire something, or you want to bring something into energetically fruition, right? And then what's the first thing you do? You get frustrated, you get upset, right? Because it's much like the healthy energetic space that says, I know you desire that, but this is what needs to be overcome, right? This is what needs to be overcome in relationality to moving towards it, right? Here's that self-doubt, right? Here's that fear of energetic commitment, right? And that, in a way, you have to think about that as the gift of a manifestation, right? And when we think about that in that way, then we're energetically patient with ourselves, because it's a beautiful journey by which we say, I expect, like help me see how I can find that, right? And then the universe that says back to us, okay, you need to fix this, right? Let's work on this. And you're like, that's not what I want to work on. And the universe goes, I know. like, right? That's often what happens, right? It's the energetic argument in relationality to what it is that we want to bring forth in ourselves versus the work that's often the hardest thing to do, right? But that's how, like, that is the force of the value of energetic compassion that we bring ourselves to. And again, that's often like you have to be easy with yourself as you're moving towards healthy relationship, because often a healthy relationship isn't demarcated by how much you've healed, but how well you know yourself, right? How quickly you're able to effectively see one's own, like, that's something I work on, like that's something I need to get better at, right? And our attentiveness, or our attenuation to understanding ourselves, becomes a joy to everybody who finds us, right? Because it doesn't feel like they have to tiptoe, right? It doesn't feel like they have to tiptoe around our vulnerable parts. We're the first ones who are able to effectively address it, right? It's like it's not, be like, "Shh," to be like, "Shh," instead, it's like, "No, I know, it's not a strong suit," right? It becomes the energetic conversation. And so I feel like this is what we see with a lot of these temperance relationships. They're very good. They're very good at knowing themselves. They're very good at knowing others, right? And the modality by which I see often this energy, like, articulates their love in helping another. Like, I see a lot of this energy that articulates their love in helping another in the space by which they're not energetically strong. But I feel like a lot of the conversations that I see that those temperance relationships have is recognizing, I keep on hearing, recognizing the important difference between helping another person through their own energetic vulnerability versus creating a space of someone else avoiding that, right? It's hard, right? And when we're energetically compassionate, right? When we're energetically compassionate, we allow each other the compassion in just enough way by which we articulate that we care, but then we also amplify that we desire to see each other getting stronger in it. And so I feel like that is what I effectively see that's happening in a lot of those relationships. Vulnerable conversations on situations that are not their strong suit, but in the way that allows one to be able to get better, right? And those are always the most vulnerable conversations, but they're also the most blessed, right? Because it starts with a conversation like that allows new ground to form, right? It allows for stability. It allows for the context of possibility. And so I feel like there's a lot of that work that we see. And even in that experience, right? Stabilization, right? Bottom of the deck on this reading. There's that Queen of Pentacles. We've got Queen of Pentacles Queen of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck right now. So let's talk a little bit about that Queen of Pentacles energy. Queen of Pentacles, bottom of the deck, is a continuation of understanding what it actually means to care about someone. All right. And you have to understand it's a continuation of understanding the difference between loving and coveting. The difference between loving and coveting. Okay. When you love another person, you actively listen to how that person desires to be loved. Love is active listening. And the modality by which we look at situations and we feel the need to energetically fix things, I hate to bring it to you, you're starting to covet, right? We are not each other's problems to energetically solve. And often the modality by which we start to move away from that perception, right? The space by which we look and say like, "Oh, what's wrong with my," and you'll notice this tendency, "What's wrong with my person? Why isn't my person acting the way that I want them to?" Have you ever considered the possibility that it's because you're putting a "my" before what you see another person energetically doing, right? The modality by which we work to heal is the realization that the possessiveness of being able to articulate the fact that we feel that there is one person that is for us because we have decided it is so, is what needs to energetically go. Because that is the space by which we identify we are not each other's objects. We're not each other's energetic possessions. When we work into a space of love, we give each other to one another, right? And it's the act of giving that is beautiful because it is one that is amplified by choice. But when we move away, right? When we move away from the determination point by which we see others as something that needs energetic adjustment, moving away from the context of being like, yeah, that person's fine. If I can just get them, what did you just say? If you can do what to whom? What are you what are you thinking? Like that is the modality by which we understand that when we care about each other, we articulate to each other consensually what we're working to heal upon, right? It's mutual work, it's mutual effort, it's self affirmation that leads us to our highest self. And the more that we're able to effectively grow and learn through that is the modality by which we stop looking at each other as problems to be solved so much as we see each other as solutions that are begging to be in the space by which they are appreciated and seen as such. That is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and receiving these messages. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, it is a 2-step process. You have to book the reading and you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you'd like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my site. So I encourage you to do it there. A couple of updates before we move into personal readings. First and foremost, thank you to everybody who participated in our class on the World card. Our next class will be held on Wednesday, next Wednesday, February 18th at 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. Eastern. We will be continuing our studies into the tarot with a focus on the sword suite and the court cards of the sword suite. If you'd like to become part of that tarot class program, all you need to do is head on over to my stack and become a paid subscriber. Your paid subscription to my stack is your ticket of entry into our live classes each and every month. As a paid subscriber, you will have access, a paid monthly subscriber, you will have access to over 9 hours worth of material in the Tarot Church Library class archive. Now, it's not necessary to catch up. I'll be doing my best to give you an update on everything we've studied prior to beginning that next class, but the material is there for you to receive as you're ready to receive it. You'll also have access to a one-on-one chat with me and the other students to ask any questions that you may have in relation to anything we've learned and studied thus far. And if you become a founding member, not only will you receive a discount on the whole year's worth of classes, you'll also have access to over 20 hours worth of material in the Tarot Church Library class archive, as well as the opportunity of receiving a complimentary mentorship class with me, where I will meet with you personally to assess where you are on your own personal tarot journey and give you the best insights in terms of how to utilize those classes to the best of your advantage, moving towards your tarot goals going forward. One of the things I tried to do in these classes was make them accessible to the absolute novice tarot reader as well as the seasoned reader. There's definitely something there for everyone. Don't let your lack of experience or your robust experience prevent you from joining us in these classes. And even if you don't become a paid subscriber to my stack, I would encourage you to follow me there to stay up to date on any new offerings and services. You'll also be able to go there to learn more about a very special retreat that I'll be hosting this August. I'd like to invite you to join me August 8th through 13th as we will be traveling to Italy to study the tarot in the location by which the tarot was first documented to be discovered, sharpening our tarot skills and learning more about the culture by which the tarot was able to grow and thrive. Everyone who participates in that retreat will not only be receiving one-on-one personalized education with me, but will also have the opportunity of receiving a complimentary mentorship class that is included in the retreat package. And if you sign up this week, we are still offering a $200 discount to anyone who is able to register this week. Make sure that you're securing your spot. If you would like to become a part of that retreat, you don't have to send the full amount. You just need to put down your deposit, and you can find the ability of doing that over on my stack or over on my tree that is links in it in my bio. I also want to let you guys know that on top of my standard life path readings, I also offer mentorship classes. These are for any of my students seeking a more personalized educational experience with me. I take a very limited number of students for this reason, as those classes are focused on each individual's personal spiritual goals and journey work. Those classes can be purchased on an individual level or as a monthly class series, weekly or biweekly, as your schedule permits. Also, for my students seeking more consistent weekly tarot support, I'm very happy to offer weekly tarot insight packages. That is a package of 4 30-minute readings, again, weekly or biweekly as your schedule permits, so that you can stay more consistent on your personal journey at a discount, as well as very happy to offer dream interpretation readings, which you can purchase per dream or as a series. If you purchase the series, I would encourage you to start to keep a dream journal, as we will meet weekly or bi-weekly with that journal to utilize the tarot to understand the key themes and messages coming towards you in the dream space. I want to thank you guys so much for being here today and sharing in these messages, and we will do this again on Sunday. That is our daily collective read